Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles.
Hi there, I'm Rabbi Matt Shapiro. Welcome to our next episode of Nurturing Light, where we explore connections between the weekly Torah portion and the always interesting and often challenging experience of being a parent. We have a big moment coming up in the life of our family and our experience of being parents coming up in a couple of months. Our oldest has his bar mitzvah scheduled for August 31st. And so there's a lot happening already in terms of his preparations ritually and the logistics and organizing everything and the kiddush and if there's going to be a party or a trip and what all of that looks like. And it's easy, as it so often is, to get engulfed by the different ways in which the logistics of life need to get figured out. And of course, that's not the whole story. There are also the bigger picture ways in which this impacts him, of course, as a almost adult in the Jewish tradition, and our experience as parents, particularly since this is the first time we're experiencing this. This idea of, as he's moving into the world as a soon-to-be adult in our tradition, what does that look like? And what is he going to be carrying with him as he transitions into his next stage of life, Jewishly, then into high school, and then, of course, everything beyond that? What is he going to be bringing with him from our tradition, from our home? What's he really bringing with him from us as parents? And in parenting, there's always, to a certain extent, this question of legacy. How we'll be remembered, what our kids will carry with them from us. There's always the present moment, what we need to be doing today and this week, just getting the kids with lunches in their bags, kippot on their head, backpacks ready to make it to school. And also, in the broadest of strokes, what will remain, what will linger, what our legacy will be as parents and as families. How are we parenting our kids? Really, not to be morbid, but just in a true sense, how are we parenting our kids so that they'll be okay after we're gone? To a certain extent, that's always a question. And that's a big question. So how do we do that? This week's Parsha, Tetzaveh, is not necessarily going to hit anybody's top 10 Parshiot list. And it, of course, has wisdom to offer us. It's unique in a couple of ways, and narratively, there's an interesting feature of this Parsha, which is that it's the only Parsha between the beginning of Shmot, of Exodus, and the end of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, where Moses is not mentioned by name. He's only obliquely referenced at the very beginning of the Parsha with the second person pronoun ata, you. You, in this case, referring to Moses. That you should tell the Israelites, you should instruct the Israelites to bring oil of beaten olives for lighting, that this is what they should do as they're assembling the Mishkan, the tabernacle, laha'alot ner tamid, and translated as for kindling lamps regularly. But if you recognize that phrase at the end, ner tamid, it's also possible to understand that as eternally, or for always. So you could read this in two different ways of instructing what's happening here. That one, this is something that they just need to do each day. That this is something that people need to commit to when they've built the tabernacle, that they need to be lighting this lamp every day that the tabernacle is standing. And the other, which resonates more with this idea that lingers with us today, that this is a candle, that this is a light, that this is a lamp that should be kindled and then sustained eternally, for always. So Moses here is being told that even though he's not mentioned by name in the Parsha, there's still something he needs to do to leave a lasting, eternal legacy. And so it's fitting then that in basically any synagogue you go into, you will see a Ner Tamid, an eternal light. We have it in our new sanctuary here at Beth Am. We had it in our old sanctuary at Beth Am. And basically any synagogue you go to, you'll see that light. And that aligns beautifully with this idea of the Parsha that there's something eternal that continues. And we see that on a literal level and on a metaphorical level as well. And on this idea, Rabbi Lisa Grant wrote, "Today we have no priests and no temple. The only vestige we have of this experience is the Ner Tamid, the eternal light, the first thing that God instructs Moses to establish in the opening verse of the Parsha." And I think there's something additionally resonant there, that this is the very first instruction in the Parsha where Moses is not explicitly mentioned by name, that when we ourselves are not directly in the story, we focus our attention on what are we doing to make sure that our light always remains lit. And it's such an evocative construct and image. The image of fire is a rich one and offers a lot of fuel, as it were, for our imaginations in thinking about what are we trying to create? How are we planning for when we are no longer ourselves in the picture? The world will look different after we're gone. Our kids' experience of the world after we're gone will be different. It just will. And so a question that we can ask ourselves, and that I believe the Parsha is pushing us to ask ourselves as it's placed right there at the beginning, is how are we parenting so that what's essential will continue? How are we parenting our kids? How are we passing along our values? How are we cultivating homes and lives so that as our kids approach moments of transition, that the light will always continue? What are we doing to sustain the light that we are kindling, that we are lighting each and every single day for our kids? Thanks for listening. Be well.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.